Hello, friend. Have you ever wondered if your quiet faithfulness matters? If all those things you do behind the scenes, whether even God sees them? I know I have. But I've just come across a story that I would love to share with you. It's not about a Christian woman and it's not about God, but I think it tells us something about how he works. It's kind of a metaphor for the whole God and you story, and I found it so encouraging, and I hope it might encourage you too. The story takes place in June 1944. Maureen was a young postmistress, and as part of her duties, she was required to take weather readings, barometer readings, and send them on to Dublin. Now, her little post office was on the west coast of Ireland, at a small village in County Mayo. It was so remote that when you run out of road and can travel no further, you're there. It's pretty much Europe's most westerly point. And on the morning of the 3rd of June, which was her 21st birthday, Maureen stumbled down the stairs at about 1 o'clock in the morning, half asleep. But what she saw on the barometer woke her up. The barometer showed a sharp drop in pressure. Drizzle, the winds were picking up. So she woke Ted, the lighthouse keeper's son, to double-check her readings. Because he was a bit more experienced with those instruments, they checked and rechecked. The reading was right. She sent the reading to Dublin and went back to bed. Later that morning, the phone rang. A woman with an English accent asked her, "Please check, please repeat." Maureen and Ted checked again. The reading was right. A storm was coming. Maureen had no idea that the call had come directly from the British Meteorological Headquarters. Bypassing Dublin altogether, she just got on with her life. Her reading was passed up the command chain, eventually being put into the hands of a meteorologist who realised that drop in barometer pressure meant a storm was headed across the Atlantic, and sent his report on to General Eisenhower. Now, what Maureen didn't know and wouldn't know until 1956, 12 years later, was that her reading would literally change the course of history. She had no idea that over 160,000 troops, nearly 12,000 aircraft, and 7,000 ships were waiting in England for the signal to invade France. That the man ultimately that would read her weather report was General Eisenhower. And that the invasion had been planned for the very day her storm was due to hit the English Channel. And when the information reached General Eisenhower, he was forced to make a decision to delay D-Day by 1 day. Because although a storm was coming and bringing bad weather for the 5th of June, good weather was still forecast for the 6th. And of course, as we know from history, that D-Day landing and invasion did take place on the 6th of June. It was the biggest invasion Europe has ever seen, and it was a huge success, very much in part due to Maureen's quiet faithfulness, taking that reading somewhere on the west coast of Ireland, half asleep, stumbling down the stairs. I find this so encouraging because we hear so many stories and have seen so many films over the years about D-Day, brave men landing on the beaches, but then there are many hidden stories that have never been told, like Maureen's. And yet I think in our churches, in our lives today, there are many Maureens, unsung heroes who may never hear the impact of their quiet faithfulness until many years later, or may not even find out until they get to heaven. Because it wasn't until that meteorological station was moved that Maureen was told anything about the impact of her actions on her 21st birthday, the 3rd of June in 1944. And I do think this is something of a metaphor for our Christian lives. Because the world tells us that we deserve our reward now, that it's our fans or followers that define our success. But God defines success very differently. He looks at the heart, he looks at our obedience, and at our faithfulness. And of course, as older women, we do know what the Bible says. We know, for example, that in Luke 16:10 it says, "Whoever can be trusted with very little can also be trusted with much." And we know that we're encouraged to not become weary in doing good, because at the proper time we're going to reap a harvest if we don't give up. But sometimes that's a bit harder than it seems, isn't it, to actually follow through on? Because maybe you've been showing up at church when you'd rather stay home, serving on the welcome team for years, making teas and coffees, serving with the kids. And it sometimes feels as if you've not made any difference. Perhaps you spent years with your kids who've now flown the nest and are doing their own things, and you're wondering, did any of it make any difference? You've been doing those small faithful things behind the scenes, and you just haven't seen the reward, the outcome, and you're just having to keep trusting. And I don't know about you, but sometimes that trusting that he's got it all, even when you can't see the outcome or the reason, can be really hard. And for me, this story was something of an aha moment. It reminded me of something I knew but had forgotten. Because I believe that, on the whole, the impact of what we do won't be revealed to us this side of heaven. And I think there are going to be some big surprises when we get to heaven. I think we're going to discover that some of the big things we think we did perhaps weren't so significant. But some of those small things that seemed so insignificant, like Maureen stumbling down the stairs at 1 o'clock in the morning, will have had far more significance than we can ever imagine. If this story has encouraged you at all today, I'd love you to consider sharing it with a friend who might need some encouragement as well. And if you haven't already, please consider subscribing wherever you get your podcasts. And don't forget, if you've ever wondered if your story still matters, I'd love to invite you to explore more in my book, Invisible Women of the Bible, which is out and available on Amazon. It's full of stories of women just like you. Women from the Bible who struggled, hoped and persevered, yet were seen by God. But until next time, please remember, those small acts of faithfulness can have a ripple effect that you'll never see this side of heaven. So whatever ordinary unseen tasks God is asking you to do today, please remember this: God is not finished with your story yet.